Hey friends, Tashin here. I want to make a series of videos about strategy, and I think I'm going to try and bang them all out today because there's a number of concepts that I find myself explaining several times a week at this point that I have blog posts about, but some of them I wrote years ago, and I think I might explain them a little bit differently now. And so I want to have little atomic videos about each of these concepts to be able to point people to. If you're a strategy nerd, you might explain these differently. Feel free to make your own video. This is just how I would explain them to someone, really from a pragmatic perspective. Like, these are ideas I use on the ground constantly for my projects and that have been invaluable to me, and that I seem to think are really useful for other people to have access to too. So the first one I want to talk about is Cynefin, which is spelled Cynefin. It's a Welsh word that means something like environment, to my understanding. And this one is not necessarily useful in and of itself, but it helps me to understand other strategy ideas and almost to scaffold which ones are useful when. And this is about identifying what type of problem you have. So you have some type of problem, and Cynefin claims there are 5 kinds of states that problem can be in, or kinds of problem you can have. And the first one is disorder, which is where you don't even know what kind of problem you have. So just by learning about Cynefin and classifying your problem as which of the other 4 types it is, you're already on your way to solving the problem and to addressing it in a meaningful way. And most people have disorder where they don't know what kind of problem they have, or they think that it's one kind when it's actually other, or it's a combination of several or something like that. And just correctly classifying what kind of problem you have is already a meaningful step. And there's a different playbook for each of these kinds of problems. So the first one of the 4 that aren't disorder is simple. This is where you have a straightforward problem with a straightforward solution. Like the example I always like to give, which is a problem I have multiple times a day, as do you, is I'm hungry. And that has a really straightforward solution, which is to eat food, which you can do by cooking a meal or buying some food or going to a restaurant. Really simple problem with a really simple solution. It has a known solution, and you just do it. Now, a simple problem may not have an easy solution. It may be difficult, but it's straightforward. Like, if you're having an interpersonal problem, sometimes it's simple in that you just need to tell the truth. And that might not be easy to do, but it's simple, it's straightforward, it's clear what the solution is, at least in that particular kind of case. So simple does not mean easy. Another word that they use for this is obvious. I like simple. And that's in distinction to complicated. So complicated problems also have a known solution, but they're involved. There's sort of a step-by-step sequence. There might be conditional logic. And typically it requires expertise or familiarity or knowledge, domain knowledge. An example I like to use for this is like if your refrigerator breaks. If you have a refrigerator and it breaks, the cooling stops working, probably someone knows how to fix that. I don't know how to fix that. I know nothing about how refrigerators work. I would not be able to solve it right off the bat. And there's basically 2 things you can do here. One is to hire an expert, like a refrigerator repair person, or you can go and learn the domain knowledge needed to solve that problem and watch a YouTube video or do some research, whatever it is. Oftentimes hiring an expert or bringing an expert on is the best solution because it's expensive, but like they have seen it all and they know what they're doing. But it's also totally valid to solve it yourself and to learn what you need to. That just takes work and takes effort. And I like to think of that as like a headache. It's like, well, it takes work to figure out the complicated solution yourself. It's already known, there's best practices, there's clear solutions, but you have to acquire hard-earned domain knowledge in order to solve it. Picking up some food when you're hungry does not require domain knowledge. It's just like you just eat food. It's simple, it's straightforward. Complicated problems have more involved solutions that require domain knowledge. But there are known solutions. Now, the other two, complex and chaotic problems, those both do not have known solutions. So a complex problem is a problem that has emergent properties, that's never quite been solved before, that's never been faced before, not in the particular way that you're facing it, and no one knows what the solution is. There's not a right answer that's already pre-known to what the solution is. And there are lots of kinds of complex problems, but often if it involves people, like interpersonal situations or community problems or politics or culture, anything with humans, also the environment, health of the body, like these kinds of things are complex where there's not necessarily a known solution ahead of time and you have to figure it out by yourself. But there are cause and effect relationships. There are like inputs and outputs, there are levers, you can do different things. And so what you do with a complex problem is you try this phrase is very important. You try multiple small, safe to fail experiments in parallel. Multiple small, safe to fail experiments in parallel. So that another way to put that is you try things. You just try stuff. And you try multiple things at the same time that are small and that are sort of reversible or safe to fail. Like, for example, if it involved money, it's like, well, don't spend more than $50, $100, $200 on an experiment. That's safe to fail. You can waste, quote, waste $200 on a project and it's not the end of the world. You can make that again. Don't spend $2 million on that. That's not necessarily a safe to fail experiment unless you're a billionaire or a trillionaire or something. Obviously, it depends on how much money you have. Other kinds of safe to fail experiments include like having a conversation with someone or interviewing someone or reading a book or taking a class or something. It's like that conversation or that class or whatever it is may not solve your problem, but it's small, it's safe to fail, and if you try multiple things in parallel, probably at least one of them will advance the plot and help you to get closer to solving the problem. Say you're a manager at work and your team is undermotivated or something. You don't know what the problem is, you don't know how to solve it. Your team, your specific team, is a unique team with different people in a different context than has ever happened before. And so the exact solution to what works for you is in that situation is going to be different than other managers. And you can still compare notes and try things that they've said worked for them, but ultimately you're in a very specific context that hasn't been faced before because these are unique people who are complex beings of their own, and there's an emergent complex environment from the network of the people that you're working with that's different than other office environments or other work environments. So you try multiple small safe to fail experiments in parallel. You try stuff, you do stuff, you just do stuff and see what works. And probably if you fast forward 6 weeks, 6 months, you'll be like, oh, I never thought of this, but such and such was the case. And when I did such and such thing, that solved the problem. And I didn't see that coming, but because I tried multiple things in parallel, I had a better understanding of what was happening and how to solve the problem. And at that point, it shifts into a complicated or a simple problem where it's more known. Both simple and complicated, there's known problems with known solutions, just of various complexity, which is like complexity, but for complicatedness, not complexity. Complexity it's an emergent system where things are mutually dependent and it's sort of unknown what's going to happen in advance. There's no experts on that particular system. There's no known solutions ahead of time. Now, the last one is chaotic. And this is where, unlike complex, there's no causal relationships between your actions and the environment. There's no clear causal relationships. Maybe things have effects, but they're not predictable, and you can't anticipate what's happening at all. The classic environment, example of a chaotic problem would be war. You're in a war zone. That's bad, and things are just changing really rapidly, and you don't know where there's going to be violence. You don't know how you're going to get food. You don't know how you're going to get water. You don't know what the political environment is going to be. Everything's just a mess. And the thing to do in a chaotic environment is just to do something, anything, and get out of it as quickly as possible. You just want to get out. And the problem with the war example is that it overly implies that chaotic problems are like bad morally. It's possible to have chaotic situations where there's nothing necessarily morally bad happening. Like, for example, if you're just having a lot of change in your life happening all at once, you're like moving locations and you're changing jobs and you have a different relationship or something, it's like, that's not necessarily bad, but so much is changing so fast that it's chaotic, and you want to get out of that into a more orderly state of affairs as soon as possible. I have a post about this of like peacetime versus wartime productivity. This is very similar to that, of like, there's different playbooks for when you're at peace versus at war, and you want to act differently in those situations. So that's Cynefin. It says that you have problems and it's worth classifying what kind of problem you have, that it's bad to not know what kind of problem you have, and often problems can even be composed of multiple of these, like there can be simple aspects and complex aspects, or complicated aspects and complex aspects, and different playbooks are useful for different kinds of problems. Different solutions will lead to different things will lead to different solutions to those problems. And if you try to treat a simple problem as a complicated problem, or a complex problem as a complicated problem, or a complex problem as a simple problem, you will run into problems. And so it's worth correctly identifying which kind of problem you have and proceeding accordingly. As I said, this is really useful to me for scaffolding which kind of which productivity or strategy tools are useful in which context. Like SOPs, for example, which I love, standard operating procedures, those are useful for complicated things where it's like there's a known solution and you just want to go through the precise steps at the precise time and follow it through. You just want to do those things in that sequence and see it through. So that's Cynefin. It's been really useful to me as a mental model, especially for scaffolding different strategy concepts, which I will go on to proceed to explain. Some other ones that have been useful to me, you can also check out my blog post Strategy 101, which goes over the top most useful strategy ideas and tools that I have encountered and how they fit together, as well as linking to resources for learning more about each of them. Hope you're having a great day, friends. Sending you love.